Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Legion Alpha video. Today I'm going to be giving you a look at how the Boomkin plays, and I've got to say I'm extremely happy that they've made the changes that they've actually made. So, in Warlords of Draenor, you were very much just following a bar, and I remember leveling up my Boomkin and kind of enjoying it, and then getting in a raid context and basically hating playing it, thoroughly hating playing it. Well, they've changed things significantly, so what am I going to do in this video? Well, first of all, I'll go over the core gameplay and how that's changed. Then I'm going to talk about the talents, all of the abilities, and the artifact weapon. Then we're going to tie that into some full gameplay for this spec. So first of all, let's talk about resources. You can see I've got a new resource bar here. It's Astral Power. Astral Power is something that is generated by a number of spells. That is pretty darn different from how things are currently, where it's basically just you following the bar. So let's go on to the abilities themselves. We've got Moonfire, a quick beam of lunar light that burns the enemy for 3,000 arcane damage and an additional 18,000 over 18 seconds. And then of course we've got Sunfire, a quick beam of solar light that burns the enemy for 3,000 damage plus an additional 14,000 over 14 seconds, and it also spreads to enemies within 5 yards. They are your same sort of basic dots that you've got now. We then have two direct damage abilities, Solar Wrath. Hurl a ball of solar energy at the target, dealing some damage and generating 6 astral power. And then we've got Lunar Strike. This is a 2.41 second cast. You throw down some arcane damage on the target and it does a small AoE, generating 10 astral power. Now you may be wondering, well, what the hell are we going to spend this astral power on? And the answer to that is Star Surge. You launch a surge of stellar energies at the target, dealing 20,000 damage and giving you a solar and lunar empowerment. The solar and lunar empowerments come in the form of a buff, which will make your next Lunar Strike or Solar Wrath, according to my current amount of mastery, I believe, 69% more powerful, and you can accumulate up to 3 of those empowerments. This is such a big change. Basically, it means you have control again, which is really nice because control is something that you didn't particularly have. So I'm going to very quickly just run into combat here. So what are we going to do? Well, first of all, we're going to dot up both of our targets. There we go, they're dotted up. Now we're just going to be spamming our Solar Wraths, and you'll see down there that I'm gaining astral power, and now I've got enough to do 2 Star Surges, which has given me 2 charges of empowered Solar Wrath and 2 charges of empowered Lunar Strike. So I can now go do the 2 of those, and yeah, that's basically the core of how this spec plays. But of course you're going to be wanting to maintaining your dots, so you know, maintaining them between multiple targets, and quite a few different things like that. That's how the core gameplay works, and it actually creates a really, really nice flow. And it's funny, you end up generating so much astral power that it's just got a great pace to it. Like, if you're in a situation here where I've got loads of astral power, that's fine. You can burn off loads of Star Surges and then just pull your resources here and just be able to do 2 of each. That feels quite good, and you'll be able to pull up those things for maybe somewhere, a time when you'll be under some beneficial effects in your raid. I love the control that is there. I think this is going to be a class with a lot more depth. With the other incarnation of Boomkin, it was kind of like you didn't have opportunities to be great, you just had opportunities to fuck up. I don't really think that was particularly fun. Now, there are a number of pretty interesting talents and very cool interactions as well that come from the other things that are available, but first of all, I'm just going to go through the various different abilities for you. So we'll start off with Bark Skin. Apparently we just get this as a defensive cooldown, so you get Tough Skin. It reduces all damage taken by 20% for 1 minute cooldown. You can go into bear form, of course. Blessing the Ancients, which is a talent. There's cat form, Celestial Alignment, so you increase the damage of all of your solar and lunar spells by 30% for 15 seconds. And more importantly, additionally, your Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath generate 50% additional astral power. I have no idea why I said more importantly there. That made no sense. They're both very good effects. Basically, Celestial Alignment is a very big cooldown. We've got Dreamwalk, which is what teleports you back to your class order hall. We've got Entangling Roots, so just roots a target in place for 30 seconds. Damage can cancel the effect. Healing Touch heals a target for 15,700. Innervate, which is a 3-minute cooldown, regenerate 2% of an ally's max mana every 1 second for 10 seconds, so it gives them 20% mana back. Lunar Strike, which I've already covered. Moonfire, which I've already covered. Moonkin form, so it increases your arcane and nature damage by a certain percent, it doesn't actually say at the minute, and increases your armor by 200%, plus whenever you are hit by a single target attack, you've got a 15% chance to activate Owlkin Frenzy, which makes your next damaging spell instant. We move on to Prowl. This activates cat form and puts you into stealth. We've got Rebirth, which is just your your combat res. Regrowth, which I believe I'm getting because of a talent, so that's basically just the same as Regrowth. We've also got Rejuve. Renewal is a talent, gives me a bunch of health back. Solar Beam, so you summon down a beam of solar light over an enemy's target location, interrupting them and silencing all enemies within the beam for 8 seconds. Solar Wrath, which I've already covered. Starfall is different. You call down a wave of stars at a location. It does astral damage over 8 seconds, and enemies inside your Starfall take additional damage from your Moonfire and your Sunfire. Unfortunately, Glyph of Falling Stars doesn't appear to be a thing, so I suppose we all had fun with that while it lasted. Next up, Star Surge, which we've already covered, and the same goes for Sunfire. The Swiftman, just a very... well, it's not a massive instant heal, actually. I've got like 300,000 health, so 10% health instantly, which I guess is kind of handy. We've got our Teleport to Moonglade, which is still a thing, Typhoon, which is a talent, and then we're just into the various different passives and other stuff, none of which particularly affect the gameplay, so let's move on to the talents. First of all, Shooting Stars. Moonfire and Sunfire ticks have a chance to call down a falling star, dealing 900 arcane damage and generating 5 astral power. I think that's more useful for the astral power, and that's why I've got it active. Warrior Valoon, this is a basically just an ability which makes your next 2 Lunar Strikes have no cast time. Lunar Strike has got the longest cast time and also gives you the most astral power, so that's quite nice. And then we've got Starlord. Whenever your solar and lunar spells are empowered, their cast time is reduced by 10%. On to the next tier, Renewal. Instantly heals for 30% max health, 2-minute cooldown. Displacer Beast, which is basically just Blink with a movement speed increase at the end. And we've got Wild Charge. This gives you a movement ability based on your shape-shifting form. So if you're not shape-shifted, you fly to an ally's position. If you're in bear form, you charge to an enemy target and immobilize them for 4 seconds. If you are a cat, you leap behind an enemy and daze them. If you are a boonkin, you bound backward, basically disengage. And if you're in travel form, you leap forward. Finally, if you're in aquatic form, it increases your swim speed by an additional 150% for 5 seconds. Moving on to the 45 tier, we've got the different affinities. So you can choose an affinity with another spec, and that will give you a few abilities that they've got. So, Feral Affinity, this increases your movement speed by 15%, and also gives you Shred, Rip, Ferocious Bite, and Swipe. So you get to play a very basic version of a feral cat druid. And at the same time that you're a boomkin, which I suppose is handy enough. I honestly think Restoration Affinity is the most useful in like your normal raiding DPS, encounter, unless you've got to do something particularly specific, because it's not like you can do Feral Affinity and then have the cat dash. That's not available to you at all as a boomkin. So, I mean, I could have seen like a raid utility thing in it being able to have that sprint, but whatever, perhaps not. We've got Guardian Affinity, so this reduces all damage taken by 10%, and you get Growl, Mangle Thrash, Iron Fur, and Frenzied Regeneration. I almost wonder, like, I'd be interested to see how long you could last in a situation where you pop into bear form and like a tank has died. That would be kind of interesting, so you can't really test it now. And then Restoration Affinity, this gives you Ysera's Gift, which heals you for 4% max health every 5 seconds, and if you're at full health, instead it will heal a random nearby target, which is pretty cool. It also gives you Rejuve, Regrowth, and Swiftmend. On to the next here, we've got Mighty Bash. This is a 10-yard range, 50-second cooldown. You, it invokes the Spirit of Ursuctive Stun, a target for it's a 5-second stun, basically. We've got Mass Entanglement, roots your target in place for 20 seconds and spreads to additional nearby targets. Damage caused may interrupt the effect. We've got Typhoon, which is just a knockback, pretty much. Now let's move on to some slightly more interesting ones. Soul of the Forest increases damage bonus from your lunar and solar empowerments by an additional 15%, which is quite nice to have. We've got Incarnation, Chosen Valoon, an improved Moonkin form that increases all spell damage by 15% for 30 seconds. So basically, it's just another cooldown to use, and I believe, yeah, it's actually got the same cooldown as Celestial Alignment. And then we move on to Stellar Flare. This is cool. You burn the target for some spell storm damage, and then you deal additional damage over 24 seconds. It benefits from your solar and your lunar empowerments and consumes one of each. I'll show you what the rotation's like with that in a minute. Next, we got Stellar Drift. Increases the radius of Starfall by 30% and the damage dealt by 20%. Additionally, you can cast while moving inside it. Now, Starfall, I believe, is an 8-second duration, so that's 8 seconds of casting while moving. Next, in the 90 tier, we've got Force of Nature, so 2-minute cooldown, you summon some tree ants, they attack and taunt enemies in an area. That's basically that. I don't think it's particularly interesting, I get how it's useful. Then we've got Nature's Balance, so you align to the power of the moon, well, whatever. Basically, your Lunar Strike extends the duration of Moonfire by 6 seconds, Solar Wraths extend the duration of Sunfire by 4 seconds. What does that mean? Well, if I've got 2 targets fully dotted up here, and just to give you an example, you know, what I want to be doing is kind of spreading out my attacks here, which means that overall I'm going to be having to do less GCDs that are refreshing HOTS. I can just sort of keep them rolling, which is quite nice. So basically that will allow you to keep your HOTS rolling for longer, which means that I suppose from a GCD perspective they're a little bit more efficient, because while they do some initial upfront damage, it's it's not enough that you want to be recasting them all the time. That's Nature's Balance. We move on to Collapsing Stars. This one's also very cool. This replaces Celestial Alignment, and it burns the target for heavy spell storm damage, and then does damage per second until your astral power is exhausted. So, while you're doing Collapsing Stars, it's almost like an elongated Breath of Sindragosa, where you just want to be generating as much astral power as you can. We move on to Astral Communication. You instantly generate 75 astral power, 1-minute cooldown. And finally, Blessing of the Ancients. This allows you to swap between 2 different blessings. One of them increases the astral power generated by Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike by 50%, and the other one just gives you passively 2 astral power every 1.93 seconds. So with those covered, let's talk about the artifact weapon. First of all, it's your Elkin Frenzy can periodically trigger without being hit, so sometimes you get one that is instant. You don't really have much control over it though. Moving on to the actual ability though, we've got New Moon. This is really cool. So it does a small amount of damage to your current target, and then it empowers New Moon to become Half Moon. You're probably thinking, well, what is Half Moon? Half Moon is just slightly more damage, doesn't really do anything, but Half Moon empowers itself to become Full Moon. Then when you do Full Moon, it does a bunch of damage and gives you 100 astral power. So here is New Moon on my bar. I'll click that. As you can see, it's done very little damage and then has went on a 10-second cooldown. If we just wait until that comes back off cooldown, you also notice it turned into Half Moon. I click this again, I cast that, and now it's called Full Moon. This is a 3-second cast, but it does 20,000 arcane damage to your target and grants you 100 lunar power, and then it turns Full Moon back into New Moon. Basically, this is kind of like a resource, so if you've got a full moon, then you've got 100 lunar power that you could just get at any point. For an example, you could use Collapsing Stars, and then you could cast Full Moon, which would give you 100 astral power, which would mean that your Collapsing Stars is going to last longer. You can do some little plays like that. I suppose we'll probably start off with showing you the Stellar Flare gameplay. Actually, I should go through the sort of key traits. Like, all of these little things are just, they're small, incremental things, and a lot of them don't seem to be done yet. We've got Moon and Stars while in Celestial Alignment. Each spell cast grants an additional 3% cast speed buff. And then we've got Sign of the Night Sky, which is going to do something eventually. And then we've got Power of Goldrin, so casting Star Surge summons a Spirit of Goldrin who bites the target's soul. It just says there, area, trigger, line, nuke. So basically it seems like an AoE line kind of thing. And also, just looking at Moon and Stars, would that encourage then that you stack up quite a few, you stack up quite a few empowerments so that you get a higher stack of that. Anyhow, I'll show you how this Solar Flare works. So first of all, what do? We dot up our targets, as you normally would. And I shall now commence with my Solar Wrathing of everything. And eventually we will... Got enough, so I'm just going to do a Star Surge, which is giving me my 2 empowerments. I can then do Stellar Flare, which, as you can see, has put a new damage over time spell on the target. Basically, this gives you more dots, and then in an AoE situation, I don't know, there'll be like a sort of cap on how many you can realistically maintain. That's basically how that works. It's a little bit more complicated for your rotation because it is giving you more to manage. I think that's a good thing. It adds more depth, and I've actually managed to cap my astral power. That's more because I'm kind of talking to you lot and explaining these mechanics. more than anything else. So overall, what do I think of this right now? I actually think it is a massive improvement, and I'm super happy that they've actually done something to really make this an interesting spec. This is just so much more appealing to what I want to do in-game. I hated the Warlords one with a passion. I mean, I didn't initially, but once I played enough of it to, the point where I actually wanted to be doing, fancy tricks and special tactics, once I got to that stage, I just hated the damn thing. So it's just great that, perhaps in Legion this is going to be a spec that I'll want to play. Now, I need to, of course, show you some other things, so we'll have a look at Collapsing Stars here, just once I get out of combat. Brilliant, so I've just went into Collapsing Stars, and I've also got a stored up Full Moon. I wonder if you could, on a trash pack, ensure that you have a full moon going into a boss fight. Anyway, so as always, we dot our targets up, and I'll just generate all the astral power that I need by just spamming some solar rats here. I'm not really going to pay attention to the rest of the rotation. That's that done. I'm just going to reapply both of my dots, so I don't really have to worry about that. Now let's do Collapsing Stars. So I've done Collapsing Stars. You can see there's a new dot on the target, and I'm kind of losing astral power here. Now the question is kind of, when do you do Full Moon? I might have fucked that up. Yeah, there you go, I did Full Moon, which gave me even more astral power, which means that that dot is going to persist, and of course it's quite a strong dot. So that's a cool little kind of method of gameplay there that I like in terms of making those Collapsing Stars really last. And also look at that, 19,000 damage every 5 seconds, so that is super powerful. And overall, that's how this is going to be playing for the most part. You maintain your dots. If you've got... Where are we? If you've got Nature's Balance, you try to spread out your Wraths and your Lunar Strike so that you're maybe hitting more targets. If you're in a strictly single target situation, your filler is Solar Wrath. But if you're in a, I believe, a 2, maybe 3+ target situation, then Lunar Strike is going to be your filler. So it's do the right one of these, then, use your Star Surges to get empowered versions of these, then use those. If you know you're going to have 20% damage in 40 seconds, they maybe last for 20 seconds, then you'll want to pull up your empowerments to, keep like 3 of each, so that you can then make the most use out of things. I think this is a spec with way more depth, way more interesting gameplay, and I'm really happy that Blizzard have done something about the way they made things in Warlords of Draenor. So that's it for me, a very positive video, which I'm very happy to do after maybe the Demon Hunter one. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.